may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
This literally makes no sense at all. I mean, if you go through this entire offense, I don't see a single ADP that looks correct. Now, we're going to be talking Keenan Allen. We're going to be talking about Justin Herbert. We are going to be talking about Austin Ekeler. But before we get it to them, of course, I have to give the announcement. June 19th, that is when the official Flock meetup is going to be Austin, Texas, Zilker Park at 6 p.m. Now, I'm probably going to be out there at 5:30 p.m. So y'all come out whenever you want. I mean, just look for me. It's going to be a giant grassy field. You're going to see a great looking blonde dude alongside a giant white ass dog. So just come out. Make sure you get prepared to have a great time. Talk some fantasy. I'll probably go bring some spike ball and we can just have some fun out there. But yeah, outside of that, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into this video. And I want to remind everyone, we are going to be talking 2021 fantasy football here. Now, I love Dynasty. We talk Dynasty on our Dynasty channel every day. But no, this is for redraft. And let's talk about the perfect redraft asset or a contending asset on a Dynasty team in Keenan Allen. Okay, so here with Keenan Allen, I mean, this is what I kind of mean about ADP not making sense. Because he is currently going in the middle of the third round. He is going as the wide receiver 11. And you look at Keenan Allen, and yeah, I mean, he's not one of these new, young, exciting guys. He's not a DK Metcalf. He's not an AJ Brown. But he's right there with the production. I mean, he's 29 years old as well, so you're not expecting him to fall off anytime soon, especially when you know Keenan Allen is more so a wide receiver that wins with his hands and his routes and not necessarily his athleticism. So you don't have to worry about Keenan Allen falling off this year or taking a step back in the slightest. And you look at drafts right now, he is going behind AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin, right ahead of both Allen Robinson and CeeDee Lamb. And I mean, in this range, Keenan Allen is such an easy pick to make every single time. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be looking at 2020 going, hey, Keenan Allen had a very good season. He finished as the wide receiver 7 here, which, yeah, Keenan Allen had a great year. I mean, finishing as the wide receiver 7 in points per game, of course, is going to get you some respect. But I mean, what we really need to look at is we need to look at the fact that week 1, Tyrod Taylor was the starting quarterback here. So week 1 really does not indicate anything about Keenan Allen himself. So we can remove week 1 from this sample. And also, week 15, Keenan Allen actually injured his hamstring and had to leave the game at the very beginning. So week 15, I mean, you can also remove that because he essentially didn't play. So you remove both week 1 and week 15 and the points that came with. Keenan Allen was the wide receiver 3 in fantasy. He was the wide receiver 3 only behind Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. Now, this isn't anything new for Keenan Allen either. I mean, you go to 2019, and here he was actually the wide receiver 13 in points per game with close to 16 points per game. And keep in mind, I mean, wide receiver 6 to 13, they're all within about 1 point per game. So Keenan Allen, essentially a low-end wide receiver 1 in 2019 as well. And that's with Phillip Rivers. That's with Phillip Rivers not being able to do anything. I mean, I remember watching some of those Chargers games because they would get some primetime games. And I'm sitting there going, this is the worst thing ever. I mean, just watching Phillip Rivers dropping back, not being able to move the ball downfield at all. And literally every single target is just going to Austin Ekeler out of the backfield because that's the only guy Phillip Rivers can actually get the ball to. So, I mean, that year, 2019, the quarterback play was disgusting. Keenan Allen still comes out, and he was still a wide receiver 1. Now, if you're looking at moving Keenan Allen forward and what you're going to be talking about with his target competition, I mean, this is another thing where you get an upgrade for Keenan Allen. I mean, there's less competition for targets upcoming than there was last year, where you go through Keenan Allen led this team in receiving yards to nobody's surprise. Then you have Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, Jalen Guyton, Austin Ekeler, Tyron Johnson. And hey, newsflash, Hunter Henry, the third leading receiver on this team, is now gone. And Hunter Henry and Keenan Allen run routes in the same area of the football field. I mean, they're both running routes over the middle in the short to intermediate routes, while Mike Williams is the guy on the outside. So Hunter Henry leaving this offense, he's not necessarily going to be pushing a ton of targets over to Mike Williams now because Mike Williams was playing in a completely different area of the field to begin with. Now, where are those targets going to be going? They're going to be going to Keenan Allen. Obviously, they bring in Jared Cook. Jared Cook, 34 years old, though. I mean, what are you going to be expecting here with Jared Cook realistically. And I know they draft Josh Palmer in the 3rd round, but Josh Palmer wasn't necessarily the best draft prospect. And you also look at the fact that, hey, last year, Jalen Guyton got over 500 receiving yards. Tyron Johnson got about 400. So Josh Palmer can soak up some of their volume. He doesn't have to come close to touching Keenan Allen's. So all of a sudden, you're looking at Keenan Allen and you go, hey, this is a wide receiver that was a low-end wide receiver 1 with some of the worst quarterback play in the entire NFL in 2019. Then he gets the significant upgrade over to Justin Herbert in 2020. And all of a sudden, he becomes the wide receiver 3 overall. What is going on to make him a guy being drafted as a very low wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 in drafts right now at the wide receiver 11 spot? And I think with Keenan Allen, and I know this sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but I think some people still want to believe that this is someone you have to worry about injuries with. Now, if y'all remember with Keenan Allen, I mean, especially if you were playing Dynasty back in 2016, 2017, the entire conversation circulating Keenan Allen, the entire 18th month period was just, hey, is Keenan Allen injury prone? Is this someone that's never going to be able to stay healthy? And it's laughable that those conversations were going on. I mean, looking back, that's hilarious that Keenan Allen's price in redraft leagues and Dynasty cratered because of some freak injuries. Because you look at Keenan Allen, this is someone that is the exact opposite of injury prone. I mean, he comes into the NFL, and in 2014, he misses 2 games due to a clavicle fracture. So let's kind of just keep in mind where these injuries are located on the human body and see if there's any correlation between these injuries at all. So clavicle fracture in 2014, just completely unlucky. That's obviously not a hamstring strain. That's obviously not a groin pull that you would see with a guy like Alshon Jeffrey getting injured over and over again. Then in 2015, he has a kidney laceration that causes him to miss 8 games. Is there anything that fits the description of a freak random injury more than a kidney laceration on a football field? No. How was that ever getting held against Keenan Allen? I mean, 2016 tears his ACL. I mean, obviously that's going to be something you see across so many players in the NFL. And he is completely injury free. He doesn't miss a single game. 2017, 2018, 2019, gets all the way to 2020 and misses 1 game when they're out of the playoffs by straining his hamstring. So who knows? Maybe he could have even played if he had to. But anyway, with Keenan Allen here, I mean, the floor and ceiling combination is ridiculous. He is a very safe wide receiver with what you would expect from an injury standpoint. He's someone that was the wide receiver 3 in points per game last year. Now, there are presumably more targets available in this offense. Presumably, his quarterback play is going to get even better. I mean, we can move on to Justin Herbert right now, and I'll be the first person to say, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people know this. I'm sure that a lot of people in the flock, especially in those dynasty leagues, already have Justin Herbert stashed away because we were so high compared to consensus on Justin Herbert last year. Now, I'm looking at his fantasy value, and I don't know if it lines up, but of course, we have to just acknowledge the fact how good Justin Herbert was his rookie season. I mean, if you're looking at the top 10 rookie quarterbacks in terms of their passing yards their rookie year, I mean, you have Luck at 1, Justin Herbert, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz, Peyton Manning, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, and Sam Bradford. So now you see that Justin Herbert is at the very top of this list for passing yards as a rookie. Now you throw on the fact that Justin Herbert, if you're looking at the efficiency mark as well, is actually 5th on this list in yards per pass attempt. So you could make the argument that Justin Herbert put up one of the most impressive quarterback rookie seasons of all time. I mean, that is something that you could feasibly argue. Now you go through and look at him in fantasy drafts this year, and he's going as the quarterback 6 off the board. So he's going as a mid quarterback 1. He's going right behind Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson. He's going right ahead of a guy like Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts. Now, I don't know if I can agree with this price point for Justin Herbert. Now, you're looking at 2020, and there he finished as the quarterback 9 in points per game his rookie season. So obviously, you'd expect him to progress on where he was his rookie year. But you look at where these fantasy points came from, and he was fantastic throwing the ball last year. I mean, 289 passing yards a game, over 2 passing touchdowns a game. And here, the one thing I'm going to be looking at is the lack of usage in the rushing game for Justin Herbert. I mean, here he averages 15.5 rushing yards a game last year, and he honestly gets extremely lucky. We talk about this all the time, that touchdown variance is definitely a thing, where touchdowns are so random and fluky almost in the NFL, with the sample size being so small, that they're a lot harder to predict year to year, and they're a lot less correlated than yards, than receptions, than targets. So you're going to see these fluctuate year to year. And what you want to focus in on is you want to focus in on the volume, understanding that a guy like Lamar Jackson, who's going to be rushing the ball for 60 yards every game, there you have a decent chance to pick up a ton of rushing yards. Whereas someone that's not necessarily going to be having that same type of volume, you should naturally expect that number to be low. Well, despite him only having 15 rushing yards a game last year, he actually came away with 5 rushing touchdowns, which, I mean, is not going to happen again in 2021. I think that's a safe bet to make. So even if he does progress as a passer, I mean, what is the ceiling for him to do that actual progression? I mean, are you going to be expecting him to jump up to being throwing the ball over 300 yards a game? Are you expecting 2.5 touchdown passes a game? Even if that happens, then he's only going to be returning value on where he's currently getting drafted. Even if that happens, it's not like you're going to be sitting there jumping up and down going, yay, we got Justin Herbert. This is a league winner right here. And also, if you look in fantasy drafts, what I love to do is profile these guys. Okay, Justin Herbert, clearly looking like a pocket passer option, someone that could be a guy like a Patrick Mahomes, someone that could just blow the top off what you're expecting with the passing volume. But what you would usually see in that case is you would usually see multiple top options going in fantasy drafts right now, where really the only 2 guys even being drafted from this team in the majority of drafts are Keenan Allen and Austin Ekeler. Obviously, in best ball drafts, Mike Williams is going, and that makes a lot of sense with how Mike Williams plays the game. But, I mean, it's not like anybody's excited about Mike Williams being a top 24 option. So I'm looking at this going, why would we not just draft the skill positional players if the targets are going to be so condensed? Why, instead of making the bet on the overall offense, why don't you just make a bet on the few players that actually drive the offense in Keenan Allen, and also our next guy, Austin Ekeler? So Austin Ekeler finished as the running back 8 last year in points per game, which very similar to Keenan Allen. I mean, that's a fantastic mark. Nobody's going to overlook the fact that Ekeler was the running back 8 in points per game. But what we also have to do is we have to go, hey, well, Austin Ekeler left week 4 early. And if you take away the points that he scored in week 4 and then change the amount of points per game that he had, he actually jumps up to being the running back 5. He jumps up to being a top 5 running back with 18.22 points per game. Now that is nothing to overlook. And I know a lot of people are going to be looking at this with Austin Ekeler and going, yeah, but it was a small sample. It's really hard to say that he would have done that through the entire season, which is a fair point. And especially if you're looking at a player where you haven't seen it before, maybe a rookie, maybe someone who just breaks out in year 2, then yeah, that's a valid concern that you have to have. But if we zoom out here with Austin Ekeler, I mean, this is someone that was the running back 4 in points per game in 2019. So essentially, you have back-to-back top 5 running back finishes here for Austin Ekeler. Now, he is 26 years old, so this is about the point where you have to get a little bit worried about these running backs getting a little less effective with what they are doing in terms of having that explosion and having that juice to burst through the hole. But nonetheless, I mean, this is someone where you've had that elite production over the past 2 years, not to mention that you're seeing a significant upgrade on the offensive line with Rashawn Slater coming in, one of the top offensive tackles in the entire draft. So presumably, you'd expect that this is going to be a team that should be much better with their run blocking efficiency. So Austin Ekeler, let me get this straight. He was the running back 4 in points per game in 2019. He was the running back 5 in points per game in 2020. You're expecting an offensive line upgrade. You're expecting a quarterback upgrade. Why is he currently being drafted as the running back 8? What is going on? Why is he falling to the second round in fantasy drafts? Is it because this is a player that you have to worry about injuries with? Well, to solve that question, let's go through. Let's look at his career history. Comes into the NFL in 2017, doesn't miss a single game due to injury. 2018, he misses a game due to a concussion. I mean, very, very random there. He only misses 1 game. 2019, doesn't miss a single game. 2020, that's his 1 injury you can account for. Yeah, he has a knee injury. It is serious. He misses 6 games because of so. But he comes back by the time you get to the end of the season, so he's not someone you have to be worried about coming in to the 2021 year injured at all. So you go, okay, a player with no injury concerns in the slightest. Well, did they bring in another running back in this backfield? Is that what's keeping Austin Ekeler down in fantasy drafts? Well, no. Austin Ekeler actually is playing in a backfield with almost no talent here. I mean, he's playing alongside Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. So I'm not worried about this at all with Austin Ekeler. I mean, I think you're viewing him as a player that is extremely safe, a bet that is probably good to make, that he is going to be a top 10 running back outside of injury. And he does have the upside to finish in the top 5 like he's done in consecutive seasons. So this offense, I just don't understand the ADPs right now. I don't understand how people can be so excited about Justin Herbert, even though Justin Herbert doesn't provide that rushing you need at the quarterback position in fantasy to have that elite ceiling. Yet there are only 2 real players that have the condensed offense going through them in Keenan Allen and Austin Ekeler, yet their ADPs seem slightly depressed. So instead of drafting Justin Herbert, I'm going to be drafting a very safe option with a very high ceiling in either Austin Ekeler or Keenan Allen. Now, obviously, in Dynasty, with the age, it's a little bit more complicated than that because we understand contract situations play into it, as well as them expecting to not necessarily be at their peak form over the next 3 seasons. But if you're just talking 2021 fantasy football production right now, Austin Ekeler, Keenan Allen, fantastic bets. But please let me know what y'all think down there in the comment section. And also, while you're down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. And I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to thank everybody who has recently decided to join the flock in Alex, Jack, Bud, Kevin, Connor, Caesar, Jonathan, Joseph, Jordan, and James. Thank you, my dudes.